Well, I'll tell you what. Great segue into the topic, Chris. Barney, I just don't think any of us have 10 to 15 years.
Well, I don't either. It's that's the biggest one of the biggest things I wrestle with my ministry is like I'd love for it to take off,
Right,
and I got two things I look at with it. It's like, well, how does it take off? I'd love for every church in the country to be aware of what I'm teaching. I think it's
right,
beneficial.
right.
But at the same token, I can't teach it to everybody. I
No,
need people like me that are very interested in Revelation and grab
right.
hold to it and learn it to start teaching it here and there and go around everywhere.
To take your material and go out and spread it for sure.
Exactly. And that's what I've tried to do. I got the PowerPoint presentation that I use,
Right.
uh, a fairly recent version of it's on my website. If I had somebody wanting to use it, I could put the latest one on the website in a matter of, half hour.
Sure, sure.
And I'm constantly updating it, so it's not always the most up to date out there. Where I'm adding a little tweak here or a tweak
Sure.
there, but yeah, I'm trying to share the stuff. I'm not trying to keep it and make it all. I copyright it so people don't go off and start printing everything I've got, and
Right,
but at the same token, I want people to be able to use it.
right.
But
So,
but if we've only got 4 weeks left,
but think about that. What sign in this season do you think points to more than anything, kind of the end and Christ's return? If you had to look at one thing, what do you think?
what
Which sign?
signs?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure. Signs, signs, signs. Let me think. I need to rehearse for this.
Mm. Well, no, but because I asked myself the same question and I said, okay, so why do you feel so strongly about that we are end times? And, like I have shared with you before, back in the 70s, as a much younger version of myself, kind of had that same sense or that same urgency, hey, that this could happen. But I look at it and I feel differently this time than I did last time.
Yeah.
And some of that's just maturity, some of that's knowledge, of course, but it's more than that. There's just a strong urging that, hey, really get the word out there because time is near. And for me, there's so many signs that it's just like the heavens are shouting at us, look, 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 look. Um, and whereas there's no one sign, there's so many things happening on so many different fronts, that I say, whoa, whoa, when you think about three whoas, but whoa, when are we going to wake up and really say, hey, you guys, we're entering this season. We're in this season.
Yeah. I was gonna say when I really think about it, I think as you said, we probably started seeing signs starting way back around what 2008, 2010, when we started seeing some and hearing a lot about the blood moons.
Right,
But I think if I had to say for me, the biggest sign I look at is probably the scripture that talks about this generation shall not pass. And I don't know for certain that all the theologians are accurate when they say that probably is applying to Israel and it's the date she became a nation, and that 80 years is the
right,
generation.
right,
That's the thing I look at, and I've been watching that. I think based on Jesus fulfilling those first four feast days that God
right.
ordained, and the Feast of Trumpets being the next one on that list to be fulfilled, I really almost totally believe that Christ will probably come back on that feast day of Feast of Trumpets, either the first day or the second or one of those days in there. So I look at that and I think I've been watching that for 5 or 6 years now,
Hmm.
and they just keep going away. And there's only two left before we pass over that threshold mark of 80 years.
Hmm.
And one of those two is only 5 weeks away.
Right.
That's the big thing that makes me feel like I don't know whether that's a sign as much, but even if the 80 years comes and goes and it doesn't happen this year on September 11th or next year on October 1st, looking at just the world conditions and putting it all together, how many people just knock the church and have no interest. and how much has happened with our technology, where we've talked about the AI and the mark of the beast and the capability of tracking everyone in the world. You, even if we miss that 80-year mark and it goes beyond that, even if prophecy is not accurate, it can't be many more years.
Right.
Uh, you just watch what's happening, and America is the last strong threshold of freedom. I don't know that it's the last strong threshold of Christianity. I feel like Americans are much more uh, lackadaisical when it comes to real
Yeah.
serious, strong Christianity than other parts of the world.
Right. Right.
So I still I keep coming back. I think we're imminent, and unlike you, it feels different than it has ever felt before, as far
Right.
as that being imminent. Uh,
Uh, do you, as you talk with people, in church and outside the church and friends and family and that, do you sense that others feel the same way you and I feel, that it's imminent, or do you feel like it's at some distant point in the future?
I
That
don't
there,
think all of them feel like it's imminent in the sense that you and I do. A few do that I see come to my classes and are highly interested. And I think they all think it's, maybe going to happen in the next 10, 20 years,
okay,
uh, possibly in their lifetime. But then as you get down to the younger generation, I just don't think they have a whole lot of, I don't know what other word to use other than seriousness when it comes to, and I see that in family members, and it bothers me
right, right,
just to see people that comment about we're going to do this and instead of doing this, and I'm talking about activities they decide they're going to go partake in and skip going to church.
right.
And it's just like it just staggers my imagination.
The No, no, I agree. I don't have the same sense of relevancy in younger people and what they are looking at. And there are so many distractions today for them that, uh, I mean, many, many more so than when you were a teenager or I was a teenager. I really do believe that. But the distractions have them so distracted that they're not looking at this. They're not thinking about this.
That's what I feel, and I sometimes think about that. I was, like you said, distracted when I was younger. I was bad about not being, I went off, I got saved, I was really on fire for God, and then I had that lax time in my life where I still went to church, but I just wasn't as dedicated and as just where I really don't feel like I was really where I should have been as much as I should have been there.
Right.
But I think back and I think if I was looking at the world conditions then being the way they are now, I think it would have woken me up and I would have set a fire under myself. And
Well, and I agree with that. Um, but I also think, you know what, these young people are not viewing the world situation the same way that you and I are.
well, they've grown up with so much of it and it's just
Right.
commonplace to them.
Right.
They think nothing of it. Right before we got on, I was just reading a little article about where, I guess over in Indianapolis, they had, I don't know, several hundred car parade of people who are wanting to take over a part of India, not Indiana, but India, and make it Muslim. And, here this is going on in the United States. We would never have seen anything like that back when you and I were
No.
teenagers, 20 years old. And this is something that blocked traffic. It probably got some national attention, though I didn't hear about it that way. I think I stumbled on it on Facebook and was reading about it and saw some pictures. But, but our youth today sees that stuff and just takes it for granted and thinks nothing of it. Um, and what if you were living in, the inner cities of New York where you're awakened with the call to prayer by the Islamic churches,
Right. Right.
mosques, I should call them
Right.
churches, the
Right.
mosques.
Ask, right,
We don't have that here in our suburbs, but how would we feel if we were living there? That
right,
becomes a part of those young people's life. They
right.
think nothing of it, and yet that never went on 50 years
No,
ago.
or Minnesota or areas, Chicago or suburbs of Chicago, where I mean they have built in the last 5, 10 years big mosque or big community centers for um, celebration of the Muslim faith. So
Mhm.
it is interesting that you're right. The younger generations have always had technology that you and I did not grow up with. They've been surrounded by a very different perspective on um, really God in America. I
Right.
mean, we have removed God from so many things in our culture that, as a boy growing up, like I said, uh, Sundays were a day that you kept holy. I mean, stores weren't open. I mean, there was really nothing to do. You couldn't even buy gas on a Sunday.
Hmm.
As a young boy. And when you think about today, all those things have been through time have been whittled away. So how does Sunday appear any different than any other day?
Well, that's my thinking. I look at it and I think, even when you get inside the church house, so many churches, all the talk is we're going to eat after church. Almost like that is
Right, right,
the main subject more than what the pastor just preached on.
right, right,
And it's not just the congregation, but it's the pastors. They can't wait to get out to the restaurant.
right, right,
And I have thought for years, we're told scripturally that the Sabbath day, we're to honor it, we're to set it apart.
right,
But how do we
right,
do so?
right.
We, and best I can tell, we don't. It's just any other day. And, how should we be setting it apart? And the
You-
only way I can answer that is I look back to our ancestors, our grandparents and great grandparents, and how did they set it apart? Is that what we should be doing?
mhm. Well, they definitely set it apart differently than we set it apart,
Yeah.
for sure. And the way they set it apart, right, wrong, good, bad, or indifferent, you can disagree with them or agree with them or whatever, but it forced the focus to be more on God and Christ than it did the worldly things that we see happening all around us today. Because
Yeah.
in large cities, Sunday is, other than shortened hours, it is almost like any other day of the week.
Well, exactly. Look at just in the last few years, and we think nothing of it, but look at the shipping companies. They used to
Right,
shut down Friday at 5 or 6 o'clock, whatever it was, and you had no packages going to be delivered on Saturday or Sunday.
right,
And then all of a sudden, I think FedEx came into being, and oh, lo and behold, you could pay extra money a little bit, and you get a package, and you can get it there next day on Saturday if you really needed it there.
right, right.
And it's gone from that to the point where now they all compete with trying to be there on Sunday. You don't
Yep,
even have to ask for it. You order something on Saturday
right,
from Amazon, you happen to be a member of Amazon Prime,
right.
it's probably going to show up the next day at Sunday on your front porch,
That's right.
providing something that they keep in stock in their warehouses, which many items they do.
That's right.
And whether you want it or not, and then also not only you can ship something UPS or FedEx, and even that, a lot of times they drop the things off at the end of the shipment and they hand them off to the United States Postal Service, and then
That's
they
right.
deliver it even on Sunday.
Yep, yep.
And it's like, where'd all this come from? And how
It's
did
it's interesting because the Postal Service used to use Sunday just during like the Christmas season to during that extra rush, and they wouldn't deliver. And now you're right, they're they're delivering for these other carriers, and Sunday is just one more day of the week.
Mhm.
Sure.
It's totally a different world out there, and unfortunately, it leaves our children and our grandchildren in particular at a spiritual disadvantage, is what it's doing.
Well, I agree with that. It desensitizes us to really what is the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It,
Well, I find even within our family, for years now, every now and then somebody will want to take you out for a birthday
yep.
luncheon or a
Yep.
birthday dinner.
Hmm.
And, I started becoming the bad guy because when it would fall on a Sunday, I would decline and say I'd prefer not to go out.
Right.
And, it's like I stand for what I think we all ought to be standing for and try to
Yep.
take a stance there.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I'm the one under attack for
Mhm.
it.
Well, isn't that ironic when you think about how Satan works? So here you're taking a stand to honor God and the Sabbath, and yet because of where we are societal is, hey, why wouldn't you do this? This is easier for us. Why would you know what I'm saying? So, and
Mhm.
you become the person under attack when it should cause other people to pause and say, okay, why is he doing that? And you know what? He might be right.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I taught my Revelation class yesterday, and I started out with the word peruse.
Hmm.
And, I have done that before where I talk about does anybody know what peruse means? And usually someone in the class will raise their hand and says, yeah, it means to skim through something.
Hmm.
And I'll say, well, I always thought that most of my life. And then I stumbled on an elderly gentleman one day and I used that word in front of me and he could tell that I was using it exactly that way. I meant to skim through something.
Hmm.
And he says, that's not what it means. Go look it up. And I found out what it really means is to study and find details, to study something very carefully. And what's amazing is I've discovered also in the intervening years that if you go get a modern dictionary, they now say it means to skim through something real quickly. And it also means to study and find detail. And it's like, how can the
Hmm.
same word mean two opposite things?
Right.
It's like an oxymoron to me.
Well,
And
it is an oxymoron, but Barney, right there is a good example through time how we have changed the meaning of something.
exactly. And I use that in my study just to start off with. And the whole point is you don't measure the truth of something by how many people believe it or do it. You measure the truth of something according to what God's word has to say about
Right,
it.
right.
And that's kind of where I go with things and preparing people to go into my teaching because a few things I teach a little bit differently than the general mainstream theologians,
Hmm.
but I back it up with scripture to
Right,
support
right,
the
right,
teaching.
right, right. Yeah, no, I like that because that really is just an awesome example of how we have changed the meaning of something over the years. I'm gonna say probably over a generation. And you really wonder when did they change the definition in the dictionary to include both?
Yeah, I don't remember what year they did that, but I have looked it up. I found both, and I have some older dictionaries, and I've looked it up, and it's only got the older meaning, which means to study very carefully.
Sure.
But, but that's what's amazing too. When I go to these classes, I have never, ever had anybody raise their hand and suggest that this word means to study and find detail. Everybody that I've ever ran across thinks it's to skim through it.
Hmm.
And this
Hmm.
older gentleman was the only one in my life that I've ever met that thought otherwise.
Right. Yeah. So, but through time, man has changed the meaning of that word and look at the implications of that if you were using that term to describe reading the Bible or
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So
Uh,
it's something so subtle that most of us don't even notice or even think about, and yet that can have a huge impact as people um, either immerse themselves or think about um, God and their relationship, reading the Bible, even a devotional. I mean, it's so interesting. And what's interesting about it is that the meaning didn't go from weak to stronger, it went from stronger to weaker.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like in that
Yep.
there, you're not looking for details. You're not looking for. It's just it's a skim and go. Well, all of that is where we're at as a society. Everything is fast food. Your Android or your iPhone, you have access to information immediately.
Yep.
We talked about, Amazon delivering packages on Sunday. We have become so used to getting things that we want or need immediately that we don't even take the time to understand how that is happening.
Yeah. Well, you got two things there. We have become an instant gratification society.
Yes,
We want our gratification. We want it absolutely instantly. And then
yes,
the other flip side of that, that's what we want. And we don't care. We're unconcerned about what that does to the other fellow. You know,
right,
when I start talking about not going out and eating at a restaurant on Sunday, one, I honor God, I think, by being in his house of worship on Sunday. Not that I'm there all day long and don't come home and eat.
but true, true,
But when I'm going to a restaurant to eat, and there's not got to be a cook in that back kitchen there cooking the food I'm going to eat, and everybody rushes there as soon as they're out of church, well, you have to have someone working there ahead of time if you're going to get there the second you get out of church. And
right,
the waitresses and the waiters, so you're keeping them out of church. Not that they necessarily want to be there, but if they did,
right,
they would then have to take a chance, more likely than not in today's society, if they said they weren't willing to work on Sunday and they wanted to be in the house of worship, they'd probably lose their job.
right, right,
Look at Chick-fil-A. For years and years, they were the only business in your malls that would be closed on Sunday. The
right.
malls would be open 7 days a week,
Yep.
but Chick-fil-A would always be closed on Sunday.
Hmm.
And they caught a lot of flack for that and had a lot of push trying to get them to open on Sundays. And they resisted it. But goodness, look at how God has blessed that business. They didn't need to work Sundays, and they're still an extremely profitable business.
Well, not only that, so think about Hobby Lobby
Yeah.
and Chick-fil-A are both Christ-centered business models, and they both will not open on a Sunday. And they have both taken um, flack, and yet they are both thriving
Yep.
in a very competitive. I mean, think about even pre and post COVID, the competition um, during COVID and post COVID, I mean, was even greater. And
Mhm.
both of these um, businesses have survived even post COVID.
Right. And that's almost amazing when you think about it. They're doing it on sixth, seventh of as much business as the others are getting, theoretically. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
so
Well, think
that's
about
business.
Sunday is just another weekend day where people use it to run errands like they would a Saturday.
Yep.
And so there's where you probably have a lot more movement of people and opportunity for people to purchase goods and that. And they've said, we're honoring God. And again, they are still the business model, they're still thriving, like you said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
it
what I say. They're prospering, even though you look at it one way and say they've cut out 1/7 of all of their business, and
right.
they're still thriving and doing well. And that's in the face of how many businesses have gone under during these
Right.
last 6, 7 years here that we've had. Uh,
Well, like in the case of Chick-fil-A, Barney, you think about the businesses that really survived, they were able to pivot to that kind of drive-through model or order and pick up model, which they already had. So the pressure to open up more during that time frame was even greater.
yeah. Well, that's just another example of the take care of me attitude. They
Yes,
want drive-through. You don't want to bother to get out of your car and go in somewhere. You'll go through a line, hand them some money, and you hand me what I want, and I'll go on my way.
right,
Uh, for years, I used to pull in and would look at the line for the drive-through and say, "I'll just park. I'll run in and buy from the counter what I want. I'll be in and out before I get up to the window in the line."
Yep.
I
Same
need to
way.
pay for my food.
Yep. Same way.
That was the case. So, but our younger generation doesn't think in those terms. Uh,
No, no, because again, they have been conditioned by everything at their fingertips in this instant gratification that they've grown up in.
you know,
And but to me, as I look at it, that's another deterioration of society um, that could be removed pretty easily. And what would people do then?
mhm. Yeah, well, to me, it's just like you said, another sign of the times and what you're used
Right,
to. And
right, right.
uh, I was just I was talking to wife the other day, and we were counting, not counting numerically, but just reciting to each other, this restaurant's gone out of business, and this one's gone out of business, and so many restaurants that used to be part of our mainstay society just don't even hardly. They've either closed entirely or they've closed down drastic numbers of their stores. Uh, we've watched, an example, Pizza Hut. All of
Yes.
the stores that are close to us in Florida have closed up. The one here in our town up here in Ohio has closed up. Uh, I enjoyed a restaurant I came acquainted with when I was traveling that started out in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called The Cooker.
Hmm.
And they boomed and took off, and we're in Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, I think out to Virginia, down to Texas.
Hmm.
And I thought, I haven't seen them around for a while. And I actually went on the internet and looked up. They closed their last store in 2004. That's been 22 years ago.
Wow.
And it's like, I didn't realize it had been that long. But
So a couple restaurants here that were local, um, they had service where you could go in and be waited on, and they don't do that any longer. So during COVID, they shut that down,
huh,
and when COVID was over, they never reopened it. So you can go in and use the restaurant, but there are no waiters or waitresses.
really?
Yeah.
So you have to order via kiosks?
Well, you order either via kiosk or the person will take your order and they'll bring the food out to you, but it's like it's carry out and you're just basically using their tables to eat carry out food.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, same food, but they don't offer the in in dining service anymore like they used to. Well, and like the Steak and Shake, which really was created here in Bloomington, they don't. You used to have a in dining service, which I really enjoyed and liked, but they don't do that anymore either in their model. It's all carry out, or you can go in and order at a kiosk and pick your food up once they call your number and use the restaurant, or it's drive through.
Yeah. We have one in Florida. That's the way it's working. You got to order at the kiosk inside the store, and then they'll bring it to the counter, and you pick it up, and you can use their tables and chairs in the restaurant to eat at.
Right.
But they don't come out to like you said, to the tables to really wait on you or take care of you.
And there was a different experience having something cooked fresh, and they served it Steak and Shake, served it on real dishes, real glassware, uh,
Hmm.
and and none of that at all anymore. So it is amazing the changes that COVID even accelerated or brought on, that a younger generation they will never get to experience.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I look at so many of our grandkids, and they're reaching. We got a few that are in their mid and upper 20s, but most of them are more at this point in time reaching their early 20s.
Hmm.
And when I said this one restaurant, and I happened to be one I enjoyed, it's been closed for 22 years.
Gosh,
Uh, and like I said, it just blew my mind. And there's been so many that were, from my background, just household names, and they're gone.
right,
Uh,
right, right. Yeah, I've never heard of. So what kind of restaurant was it? I mean, what kind of food did they
the
serve?
Cooker,
Yeah.
they made their mainstay off of almost like home cooking. They had pot roasts uh,
Oh.
and it was good. It was
Mm-hmm.
really good. But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I liked it because I, at the time of my life when I was single and
Sure, sure.
I wasn't a cook, I'd fix a grill on the grill, a steak or something out and then at home. So
Mm.
I remember I went to a pastor friend of mine's house one time and was visiting him, and they wanted to take me out to a restaurant and treat me. And it's like, I eat at a restaurant every day of the week. That's not a treat for me. Your wife's home cooking is a treat for me.
Yeah, there you go. Missing that, missing
So,
home cooking.
yeah, it's just,
And you know what I've noticed too is a lot of this is taking us, and I'm just talking about society in general, away from sitting down at a table and sharing a meal.
it does. Yeah, you get a lot of that. It makes it more difficult. And, and not only that, but, even your temperament. I get so aggravated with these kiosks. You know what you want when you go into the restaurant to order a lot of times, especially the fast food where you almost
Right,
got their menu memorized. And yet you get in there and it's like, how do you find the one item you
right,
want? My wife actually likes a caramel frappe from McDonald's, and
sure,
we especially get those when we're traveling because it helps keep her awake.
right,
But you go to the kiosk and you want to order a caramel frappe, and you fight to figure out where in the world they buried it in this menu list. It's not
right.
like it's straightforward.
No,
So, time you're done ordering your food, you're really in a great mood to sit down and have conversation with the rest of
no,
your
right,
family at the
right,
kitchen
right.
table.
No,
Uh,
right. But you think about, sitting down at a dinner table, sharing a meal, and just what I learned from that as a child, um, manners and just the conversation and the things you picked up on and the different topics that were discussed. And you think today, most families don't sit down at a dinner table anymore.
that's probably very true. And you're right. You lose so much of that. We need that.
We
That's
we do.
instrumental in creating those young individuals into the kind of people you want them to be and that they need to be.
Yeah. But just in my two examples, the way they set up in the restaurant, you're taking people away from you're almost eliminating the opportunity for people to sit down at a table. Boom.
Yeah,
It's
interesting.
taking that piece away as well. So it is um, definitely. I really do believe that we have accelerated the um, or I will say Satan has accelerated his attack on, the family, the church, um, and just a society of, you know, people that love and endure freedom, like we do in the United States. And so much of it is being whittled away all around us right now. And those are the things that I believe are important to help us stay focused um, on God and keeping Christ at the center of things. And the more and more that we allow this to happen, the more and more instability is there. And at some point, people won't even be able to look back and say, "Hey, do you remember when we did this?"
Oh, exactly. They're losing the foundation that made
Yeah.
this country what it is. And
Yes.
it's being replaced with, like we were just talking about, instant gratitude. It's being replaced with me, me, me.
Yes.
That's one of the things I even teach about in what I'm teaching the Revelation class. Laodicea, that's our church age. We're a
Right.
representative of our time frame in the church age.
Yep.
And I found one place where it says that the translation of that word Laodicea means uh, the trying to think of what it was. I say it is um, the will of the people.
Hmm.
And when you watch the news, you'll frequently see somebody's on the news and they're complaining about this person violating my rights, the rights of the people. That's what I was trying to think of.
Right. Right.
It means the rights of the people or the person.
Yep.
And that's what we're all about. It's all about me. You don't worry about how the other person feels or what rights he has.
Mm-mm.
It's just what rights we have and how it affects us.
Yep. You're right.
And
Yep.
that to itself is almost goes perpendicular to the Christian way of life. Because Christ was all about serving and all about giving and all about helping someone else.
But Barney, isn't it amazing? And we haven't even talked that long, but isn't it amazing all the ways? that we just talked about, the differences we've seen in our lifetime, isn't it amazing the number of ways in which we are being attacked? And when I say we, I mean the church or unbelievers are being attacked, and we don't even realize that it's an attack.
Oh, exactly. Well, that's one of the things I told you, just the conflicts that we've seen between family members. And it's unheard of, I think,
Right.
compared to what we used to see. And
Yep.
I'm amazed. I finally become aware that this isn't an isolated attack between this individual and this individual, but it's
Sure.
happening to multiple peoples, and it's happening to
Yeah.
all different sorts of families, from ones that aren't Christians at all to ones that are even a pastor and one of their family members, to
Right.
that point.
Right.
And I've been astounded once I become a little bit aware of these conflicts that are falling or popping up inside of these families, of how widespread it is. And every time I
Oh,
bump into somebody, I'm finding another relationship that's gone astray within a family somewhere. And
well, the family is definitely under attack. The
yeah,
whole concept of the family is definitely under attack on multiple fronts. But you are right. Satan, every time he can find a way to divide us, and that's, people in a church, people in a family, anytime he can work to divide us, he's winning. And right now, everything that's being propagated is divisive. You know,
yeah,
think about, did you take the shot, not take the COVID shot?
right.
Um, you think about the racial tension that has escalated over just the last 5 or 6 years. You think about um, things even within a church. I mean, just think how many. I mean, here I know 2 or 3 churches that have gone through um, trials where people are divided over an issue in a church. And it's that we are living in an age where everything coming at us is meant to be divisive.
You're right. And yet God's word says we should be peacemakers.
Right, right.
And,
And God is not a God of confusion. It's
exactly.
right. So, and again, all this is doing is creating confusion and doubt, and that is all coming from the father of lies.
It's exactly where it's coming from. And
And
how
to me,
much more can we absorb of that? Again, right back to your point, we've got to be living in the very end of the end times.
right.
Uh,
I mean, and I'm not trying to make myself out, but when I think about how sad it has to make God when he looks down on earth and his creation to see where we are at the and how much longer will he let it stand or ride before he just says enough's enough.
so I don't think we've got much longer before he calls and pulls the plug on it.
Oh, agreed.
And again, our society is probably still far better off than most of the societies around the world.
Yeah,
I think Christianity still rules and reigns in this society, even though we're not maybe exemplifying people that are really on fire. Well, I see that more in people from other third world countries.
right,
Um, but what I see is a select group of those that are being frequently under tribulation and attack within their
right,
society, but
right.
they've chosen to live for Christ anyway.
And I agree with that. I also feel, Barney, here in America, that a big change here would be more devastating to our masses than a big change like in a third world country.
Mm-hmm.
They are comfortable being uncomfortable. We're comfortable being comfortable.
Yeah, that's it exactly. We have been blessed to the point that we're not blessed anymore.
Amen. Man, I mean, it's, yes. And I don't even think we realize the blessings that we have.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we saw Israel go through. God would bless them, and every time as they were blessed, they'd fall away and turn from it. It's in August, and Yeah, like I said, just what, 4 more weeks to Rosh Hashanah, Feast of
Mhm.
Trumpets, and then
And you've got,
another 4 weeks after that, we're no, 5 weeks. I'm sorry, 5 weeks to Feast of Trumpets.
yeah,
It's September 9th this year, which my time frame here, I think Feast of Trumpets will actually occur on September the 8th for us, and it'd be about 10 o'clock my time. I think it would be about 9 o'clock your time. So that's something
wow,
that I want to get out and make sure people are aware of, because the actual time is when the high priest sees the new moon in the morning on the
mm,
day of Feast of Trumpets. So if he sees it on the 9th, that date early in their morning will still be the 10th our time, and I think we'll still be at, like, here in the eastern United States, in the eastern time zone, I think it'll be about 10 o'clock
wow.
if I've calculated my numbers right.